Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and 1 week on from the Miami Grand Prix. I was going to do a fallout straight after the race, but I've had such a week of being ill and busyness that it didn't really come through. And more of the points I wanted to talk about after Miami, because let's be honest, it wasn't a barnstormer of a race, was actually how successful the event was itself, because it was said in the build-up multiple times, pretty much at every available opportunity, that this was one of the biggest and most important events in recent Formula One history. And to be honest, I kind of have to agree with that. So with an event that is so big and so important, I thought it'd be important to ask, was it a success? How did it go? And is Miami going to be a mainstay for the Formula One calendar for many decades to come? So we're going to have a look at the race itself very briefly. We're also going to look at the event, how it was held, how it was organised, whether there's anything that can be improved on. I'm going to try and be constructively critical, if you like. And so let's get into the video. So why was this Formula One's most important event for a generation, really? Well, mainly it's because that Formula One has tried to crack America essentially since it became a sport over 70 years ago. Formula One has tried and failed on many occasions to crack the American market, whether that's been when the Indy 500 was part of the Formula One Championship, and then they have tried so many venues, going from Dallas, Watkins Glen, Detroit, the Caesars Palace car park, and even going back to Indianapolis for a short while. In the end, it wasn't working. The crowds weren't coming. The 2005 US Grand Prix almost irreversibly damaged Formula One's reputation in the States. If you want to see more about that, I recommend these videos by Josh Reville and also by Aidan Millward. And Formula One being a very Europe-centric kind of championship, I just don't think it fitted into the American model. You've got to remember that this is a country where in motorsport, if we take NASCAR for example, two drivers will crash into each other, they'll get out of the cars and just start beating each other up. It's a very, very different world to what we have in Formula One. But despite this, time and time again, the old Formula One regime under Bernie Ecclestone continued to try and break America. Races have been talked about in Vegas, they've tried San Francisco, they've tried New York, before eventually landing in Austin, Texas in 2012. Now, Austin has been a success in its own right. They had over, 400,000 people turn up to the event last year in 2021. Since Liberty Media's takeover in 2017, also Drive to Survive, and just embracing the American market more, popularity for Formula One in America has absolutely skyrocketed. So much had popularity risen over stateside that the Miami event was secured, and then Las Vegas as well, even before we'd seen how the Miami event went. But to secure that long-term stability in America, this event had to go well. So, how did it do? Well, I think it's fair to say that Formula One chucked everything at the 2022 Miami Grand Prix. You just had to see how many celebrities, stars, Formula One influencers even were invited to the event and shown how great it was. Now, the event itself did attract quite a bit of stick, I think it's fair to say. Whether that's kind of the exclusivity of the event. Only 85,000 people were allowed to go, and if you did get a ticket to the Miami Grand Prix, you paid an enormous amount of money to be there. The fake marina as well did them no favours. The Martin Brundle grid walk has become meme-worthy in the days afterwards. And the track as well wasn't that well received, particularly amongst the drivers. I don't think it's a lost cause, really. I think a few tweaks and you can make something pretty good out of it. But especially the setup and a very, very dirty line. So if you drove just a little bit off the line, then it was effectively driving on ice, and a lot of drivers seem to struggle with that. But I think with a few tweaks, those kind of things can be ironed out. However, if you look at the event through the eyes of TV viewership, it kind of shows that the event was actually pretty well received over in the States. If you look at Adam Stern's tweet here, it says that whilst there were more people watching the NASCAR race at the Darlington, more of the younger demographic were watching the Formula One, and that is going to be music to the ears of the organisers of the event and to Formula One themselves. Even one of the bosses of the event, Tom Garfinkel, admitted that they were going to lose money over this race. They had expected to make a profit, particularly with the enormous revenues, also known as ticket pricing. However, all the expenses that went into the event means that they were going to make a loss. However, they do expect to make more money in the second year. So as for the event itself, whilst there's a lot of people over here in Europe that didn't really like it, and some of the extras, if you like, that were involved, particularly what we saw post-race, wasn't to everyone's taste. It certainly wasn't to mine, if I'm being perfectly honest. I can see why they made those decisions, and I can see why they tried to hype up the event as much as possible, and it did seem to work. They got a lot of eyes on it. The eyes of the world were watching the Miami Grand Prix, and anyone was there, and, you know, showing that they were there and showing what a great event it was, and, you know, the amount of people that they invited. They really pumped a lot into it. And if we're being honest, as long as they have those viewership figures, and it shows that there's a big audience over in America looking at Formula One, and more people are attending the event, they're looking at trying to increase the amount of people that can go to 100,000 for next year, then they're going to see that event as a success, as a money-making success. So you have to say, from that point of view, it's kind of job done for Miami. Now, as for the race itself, which for me is the important thing when I look at a new event and a new racetrack, you know, does it produce good racing? And I have to say, the Miami track itself, I think, has promise. There are some sections that I like. There seem to be some nice flowing sections, but also some very awkward ones as well. It didn't produce the most exciting race, but not every Formula One race can be exciting. It's just pretty much as simple as that. It's like in football. We're going to get a 0-0 draw every now and again. There was a decent amount of action, particularly towards the end after we'd have the safety car, but we just didn't really see much of it. The directing was a bit strange, and we were looking a lot at the front too, when there was a lot of action happening further back that I did actually really want to see. We actually had quite a few overtakes on the day, so it's showing that there is actually some promise for the layout and for the track itself, but there are going to need to be some tweaks. I really want to see that chicane kind of gone, because it's giving me kind of Barcelona Catalunya vibes, which may be the most unpopular chicane in all of Formula One. I think if they can iron that out and just make it a bit more of a smoother section, which doesn't separate the cars out as much, I think that can be an improvement. I think in terms of how they set up the track, they need to look at offline and trying to make that cleaner and make it a more grippy surface. And also the DRS seemed to be a bit strange that they were having activation zones so far after the corner. It seemed to prohibit the action a little bit. I think there are some sweet spots to find, some modifications to make, but for anybody saying that, you know, this needs to be canned immediately, you've got to remember, Formula One is going to Miami for the next decade, come what may, essentially. So they're going to have to find a way to make it work. There's definitely promise, I think, in the track and as an event, and if it grows Formula One's popularity, I don't really see how that can be a negative thing. So there are my thoughts on the Miami Grand Prix. Let me know what you thought of the event in the comment section down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and like this video, and hopefully I will see you after Catalunya. Have a great week. Bye-bye.